Hi, my name is Brooke Shannon. I'm one of two co-chairs of the Memphis local chapter of the Socialist Party USA. We're a national party, so we have local chapters all throughout the country, from Los Angeles, California, to New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Tennessee as well. We are a democratic socialist organization, so we believe in socialism as radical democracy. And we are different from the two parties that represent the country most often, Democrats and Republicans, because we believe that the system, with all of its institutions, is broken and needs a fundamental fix. We believe that the problems in the world, from environmental degradation to the unfair distribution of wealth and resources, from using public resources for private profit, racial, ethnic, and gender inequalities are all direct results of the capitalist system. So in that way, we differ from Democrats and Republicans because we believe that the entire system that they represent is fundamentally broken because it is an extension of capitalism. We believe in the abolishment of capitalism, and we believe as socialists in things like nationalizing the public resources that belong to everyone in the country. We believe in fair and comprehensive immigration reform. We believe in the abolishment of student and otherwise unfair and unsurmountable debt. Things like that are our main viewpoints as socialists. We believe in racial, economic, health, gender justice for everyone in the world. So that's a little bit about who we are as a party. The Socialist Party USA is a direct descendant of the Socialist Party of Eugene Debs in the turn of the 20th century. Debs is a formidable figure in socialism history. He was the most successful of all of the presidential candidates. In 1912, he ran a very successful presidential campaign where he got over 2 million votes nationally. This was the age of syndicalism, where the IWW and labor unions were forming to kind of beat back the capitalism that had formed and fight for justice for workers, for women, for children who were at the time working 50 hours a week in really unfair conditions. So the Socialist Party split in the early 70s to form two different organizations, and the Socialist Party USA is the Eugene V. Debs caucus. So in that way, we are the direct descendant of the original Socialist Party that was so successful in the early 20th century. So the second question was concerning the midterm elections that just passed earlier this month in the 2014 midterms. The Socialist Party is currently working to get ballot access in the state of Tennessee. As you mentioned in your email, it's quite difficult to do so. So we are in the process of garnering ballot access so that one day when one of us runs for office, we'll be able to see Socialist Party USA next to that name, as opposed to independent, which is as it stands now. I believe the only third-party candidates that I recognized on the ballot here in Memphis were the Green Party with Isa Infante running for governor, and I saw a U.S. Constitution Party as well. So hopefully one day soon we'll have a Socialist Party USA candidate. We also didn't run any candidates for office this year. We're in the process of building up our base here in Memphis, our local chapter here, and hopefully we can expand throughout the state. Formerly, there were Knoxville and Chattanooga chapters of the Socialist Party USA, and it's a personal goal of mine to have a state party as well as different sites throughout the state, especially since it's so long. Tennessee is such a long state, and it would be great to have worker solidarity throughout, all the way from Knoxville to Memphis. So, we do have elected officials as a national party. The Socialist Party USA has several people who have run for office, who are in office as open socialists. One that comes to mind, his name's Pat Noble. He is on the school board in Red Hook, New Jersey, and he is also the treasurer of the National Party. So he's very active. In the last few years, we've had people run as candidates in Los Angeles, Indianapolis, Michigan, as well as New Jersey for offices from school board to governor and senator. So we are definitely a large third party throughout the country, and we're working on gaining that power here in our local as well. So that leads us to the popularity of the Socialist Party local chapter here in Memphis. Our party was dormant for quite a few years, and within the last few years, we've experienced a rejuvenation of energy. We've had way more new members join the party, but we're still fairly small, and we're looking to gain membership within the next couple of years, as well as create a stronger community between people in our own local chapter, and that will help us gain the power that we need throughout the state. So as a person who is active in a third party, I obviously believe that third party politics are important, because I think it's really important to offer a different idea than one that you hear in presidential debates, for example, when one guy has a blue tie and one guy has a red tie, and that's the only difference between the two of them. In my opinion, and I think I can say in the opinion of the Socialist Party, oftentimes Democrats and Republicans are two different sides of the same coin. Recently, within the last few months, the President Obama, signed a bill that would drastically cut food stamp benefits for the poor throughout the country. That kind of action is incredibly deplorable when we live in a first world post-developed country, post-industrial developed country, and the Socialist Party USA recognizes that we need a voice standing with all of the working classes, because we have plenty of voices speaking for the ruling class. The capitalist class does not need another microphone. It already has two very effective ones in the Democrat and the Republican parties. So I think third parties are especially important within local politics. That's a favorite strategy of mine, and it was very successful as well in the first socialist revolution, you might say, in the early 20th century, where people ran and are currently running for offices like sheriff. Angela Walker in Milwaukee received over 20% of the votes on her own as an open socialist. So I do believe that local politics, things like city council and even mayor's races, are incredibly important for getting the name of socialism out there to the people and kind of disarming them, letting them know what we stand for, and that we're not socialism is not a scary foreign thing, but something that we need and something that it is time for in this country. So the future of third-party politics is up in the air. I think that we're seeing changes all over the country, though, with Sawant being elected to the city council in Seattle and immediately passing things like a minimum wage increase. These types of incremental steps are really important, and they're very galvanizing for the country. That was national news, and if 5 or 10 city council people were elected throughout the country, that would be even bigger news, and I do believe it would have the Democrats and the Republicans shaking in their boots, and it would show the legitimacy of third parties all throughout the country. I think that the future of third-party politics is shown in these little steps where we have a sheriff's race where 20% of the votes go to them, or school board officials fighting against Common Core and fighting for teachers' unions, in city council people fighting for the minimum wage and for unfair criminalization of the poor. Things like this happening all throughout the country show me that the future of third-party politics is the future of American politics. So I'm really looking forward to the next 10 to 20 years in this country, seeing socialists and leftists being elected as open socialists and open leftists, and not having to pretend that they side with or conform to the norms of the Democratic Party. I'm not sure if I can say if it will ever be as easy as it is for the Democrats or the Republicans to gain ballot access. I think that for the time being, it's going to be a struggle, especially because you have to sue the state for ballot access and gain a bunch of signatures and things like that. I think that with the advent of super PACs and Citizens United, I think it is incredibly difficult for third-party candidates to stand up against people like the Koch brothers, who are putting billions of dollars into what seem like insignificant races throughout the country. So I think that the future of third-party politics is in the grassroots, and it's in people waking up and realizing that the agenda of the Democrats and the Republicans is not our agenda. And I believe that there's strength in people. I believe in people power. And so I'm optimistic about the future of third-party politics in this country. That said, I think it's still very important to run, and I think that the third parties all around the country are doing excellent jobs at mobilizing people and getting their messages across. I am looking forward to a stronger electoral strategy within the Socialist Party in the state of Tennessee. I look forward to seeing candidates running for office in every part of Tennessee and representing the people, the actual people that work here, the workers and women and people of color. And I'm tired of hearing candidates only looking out for the interests of the rich, the capitalist class. I think it's time for people power. And so that's why I think it's very important for us to run to exercise democracy. So once again, our main viewpoints as a party, as the Socialist Party USA, are in redistribution of wealth. The unfair distribution of wealth in this country has led to vast inequalities on par with a third world country. For example, here in Memphis, the infant mortality rate is actually one of a third world country because this is a very poor part of the world. So that leads to things like uneducated decisions of mothers, very young mothers, a lack of health insurance, a lack of sex education in this part of the world leads to an imbalance and third world conditions. So things like economic justice, racial justice, and of course socialism as radical democracy and putting the power back in the hands of the people, taking it away from corporations and taking it away from the super rich. Those are our main viewpoints as a party. And I guess to sign off, I would just encourage everyone to go to www.socialistparty.org or socialistparty-usa.org, to check out the party, look at our constitution and our platform and principles, and if they align with how you feel, if you feel disenchanted, disenfranchised by the current political system, please do sign up as a socialist because, like I said, there's power in the people and we believe in all power to the people. So please sign up. If you have any questions, our email is memphisSocialists@gmail.com. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Third-party politics and why, it's hard for them to thrive in a two-party
Sure. Well,
system.
just institutionally, we have some difficulty having a thriving third-party system because, for one thing, we don't have any sort of form of proportional representation. So you have all these winner-take-all elections. So if you get 50% or 51%, you win, and there's no other person from a third party that's going to hold any kind of office. So if you never have anybody in elected office, it's really hard to see if that party's positions can make any kind of difference in government. You can talk about them and you can have theory about them, but it's hard to know if in practice those things would actually work. And you really kind of need that. You need to have an example out there to see if this is a good party to have. So we have no kind of proportional representation where if maybe 10% of people voted for the Green Party, then you would have maybe 1 or 2 representatives that actually were in any kind of office there. There's also ballot restrictions, and those are done by state. Tennessee actually had some fairly restrictive ballot restrictions. Just having your name on the ballot and being associated with a certain party. Those are actually relaxed a little bit earlier this year by Governor Haslam. So now you have to be on the ballot with a party, you have to have 2.5% of the number of voters who voted for the governor last time on a petition. You have to have that many signatures just to be considered a minority party. And after that, in subsequent elections, anybody from your party has to receive, I believe it's 5% of the overall vote to continue to be on the ballot for the next 2 election cycles. So if you're not meeting that threshold, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it really is when you only have these 2 parties, your party may just drop off the ballot, and then you have to go through that application process again. So it's really hard to gain any kind of momentum as a third party.
And how is it different in Tennessee? I know Tennessee is pretty strict about their ballot requirements.
Well, again, all of the states are different. They have different choices of how they do these ballot restrictions. But before Haslam signed this law, it was you had to have 5% of the voters from the previous election, and to be on the remaining elections, you had to have, I believe it was 20% of the vote. It was very high threshold, and that was lowered to 5%. So we had one of the most restrictive ballot rules in the country for a while. But I think now we're kind of on par with the other states.
And looking at the midterm election results, there weren't any third-party political groups with the candidate that won.
Right.
Because they ran against the 2 main parties that dominate.
Right.
Why do these parties persist even though they're facing really hard, a really hard battle?
Well, I think that you have people that maybe are particularly interested in one topic. So the Green Party, maybe they're really interested in building sustainable communities, and they're really interested in the environment. And maybe they're discouraged by the Democrat Party. Well, they're not going to then turn and say, well, I don't like the Democrats, so I'm going to join the Republicans, because maybe for them, that's going to be even further away from the way that they feel about things. So, they come out and they probably, we assume that they understand that they're not going to win an election. But it's important for them to get that message out there. And, it may be like the Tea Party. The Tea Party was never a formal political party, but a lot of the things that they were interested in got absorbed into the big Republican Party. So maybe that's your hope too as a third party, is that you're going to build such momentum that maybe your messages will reach the bigger party system.
And what do you think is the future for third-party political groups? Do you think that eventually that they'll have more momentum, that they'll actually be able to win elections, or is it mainly just for their main purpose?
Well, I think that unless you have some kind of major institutional change, that it's going to be hard to have a real third-party system where you have actual competitors out there. But on the other hand, with the rise of the internet, with technology, with communications technology, it's easier to get your message out there than it used to be. So the incumbent advantage and the 2-party advantage maybe isn't as strong as it used to be, but it's still a major hurdle to cross for those third parties to reach a lot of people.
And do you think that some of the reason that people are still voting Democratic or Republican is mainly based on tradition, and maybe they don't know about the others, or do you think it's basically?
I'd say that's part of it, that they don't know about these third parties, because honestly, a lot of the third parties do represent some of the values that maybe the Republican or Democrat parties also represent, but maybe with slight variance. So I think that's probably part of it, is that people aren't aware of those parties, and I think it's about tradition too. We have trouble just getting people to the polls in the first place, and then to get those people that actually do go to the polls to then change their mind about the way that they've always done things, and maybe the way that their families have always voted. that's another big hurdle to cross for those third party candidates. They're presenting kind of new ideas, maybe, or even just variances on older ideas.
And can we maybe, since I don't have interviews with the Green Party or the Constitution Party, could you maybe give us like a brief synopsis of their main viewpoints?
Okay, so the Constitution Party, they're we'll call them a far right. It's not meant to be derogatory, but they're a far right party. They want to hold true to the tenets of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. And they want a strict interpretation of those things. Well, it's what interpretation have they chosen? They're very much associated with Christianity. They have a very Christian worldview of politics. They are very opposed to any kind of agreements or foreign aid. So any kind of trade agreements like NAFTA or any kind of membership in like the UN, NATO, anything like that, they're not going to be for. So they're somewhat isolationist. At least that's what they seem to be. There's a little bit of difference between the National Constitution platform and the Tennessee Constitution Party platform, but they're very much a right wing and Christian type organization. That if you watch their elected members talk, they talk about we shouldn't think about things in terms of the right versus the left. We should think about right versus wrong. So they obviously have a certain way of thinking about, well, what is right. For the Green Party, again, their platform is fairly large, but their primary consideration is how do we build sustainable communities? How do we think about providing for our children? And so they're very concerned about pollution. They're very concerned about where our food's coming from. So the environment's going to be their major issue of concern.
Okay. And I think my battery is about to die,
Okay.
so I'm pushing it. But thank you for
I think the main problem with third parties is that people don't know enough about them. I don't think it's like the fault of the third party. I think it's the fault of the voters who don't bother doing the research. Because I know me, like I know I could do more research to find out things. I just haven't. But I think it's the fault of the citizens and the voters is we don't know enough about the third parties to vote on them. Because I know if I didn't know anything about the parties, I would probably vote just based on because what I know is a general broad topic. I'd probably vote Democrat just because you can assume if you don't know anything, you see just Republican, Democrat, but you know what the parties are, but you don't know anything about the two people. You can assume what the values they hold because of the parties are with. And I feel like if you're presented with just like a libertarian versus a Democrat, Republican, you're probably not going to know what they stand for. Which I think that's, like I said, it's not the fault of the third party so much as I think it's the fault of the voters. I think we do need to have more well-informed citizens when it comes to knowing more about the parties that aren't just Republican and Democrats.
And actually, for the most part, I do believe what you're saying, but also Tennessee, as a state, is one of the harder states to get a third-party political group on a ballot. It takes 20,000 signatures to get on a ballot in the first place. But if the candidate doesn't win, then it takes 80,000 votes the next year to get them back on the ballot. Something incredibly weird like that. So do you think that the government should be less strict on these requirements so that they can enable more third parties?
Yeah, I do. I think it seems to me like they're just trying to kill them off. It seems like if they don't succeed for some reason for the first time, which I think it's going to be hard for them to succeed the first time, then they're not going to allow it a second chance unless they can somehow just overcome the massive odds they put on. Because 80,000, that's quite a few. That's not a small number you're asking to get to people to sign up or vote or whatever. That's not a small number at all. I think that this should change. I think they should allow for more freedom of entrance and movement for the third parties. I do, because I'm not happy with the two-party system. I know a lot of Americans, just from what you hear every election cycle, they're kind of fed up with the two-party system, because I think they had, I'm pretty sure I saw a poll once, it was last recent election talking about which side you're more fed up with, and it's almost pretty even, Democrat and Republican, who you were more fed up with. So it's kind of like I think the third option would be useful for Americans. Yes.
Okay. I think that was good.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.